For those of you who are just tuning in, and that should be everybody because I just flicked the stream over, Paul is actively playing Call of Duty.
Yeah, it's Friday afternoon. I assume there's going to be some kind of a double XP thing happening because, you know, everyone's a winner and whatnot.
We're recording, we're streaming, I think.
Oh boy. Oh my. Yep. Whoever said you can't do two things at once was very, very accurate.
Oh.
One thing I don't like in this game is when you put down one of the bouncing betties in this case, if you're in the process of doing it when you get shot and the thing hits the ground, it doesn't kill the guy like it used to in the old games. And I feel like if you get it placed, that should be enough. I know.
Any other first world problems over there, Paul?
Yep. Yeah, I got plenty.
We got 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
30 seconds
Boy,
until that.
so close to the end of the game.
The on-air sign is about to start flashing. Actually, technically, we're already on air, but
right.
You know, this
the
happens
recording
on occasion
part of
with
it,
OneNote where like all these drawers are open on the left side, and I can't get them to collapse. There we go.
Drawers?
Well, like they're like panels that pop out, and I've got like 700 podcasts that I do, and then personal notes, and like it keeps expanding, and then I can't get them to actually close again to be able to see the notes. It's very convenient sometimes. But I got.
Are you guys doing that podcast on Petri yet?
Yep.
How's that going? Who does that?
We got two people right now. We got my man Dux.
Yep, nice.
He's doing it, and then a friend who works at Veeam, who I've known for many years, Rick Vanover.
Oh, I think I met him at.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
He's a
That's
really
great.
good guy.
Yeah, those are good guys too. I mean, good guys for the
Life in general.
for knowing their stuff. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
That's good.
it's what they do day in, day out.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, you ready?
I am ready.
Time's up. Let's do this.
I'll turn off.
Oops, that would be the wrong button.
Thank God. I already screwed it up.
Welcome back, everybody, to where Brad's pressing the right buttons. It is aviation therapy and wrong button week, apparently, but it's also Masters week, and here we are.
Yeah. I may not have to publish an editorial today about how our entire world is screwed.
Well, it's not screwed because, Paul, we have this defending our freedom right back here. This is
right.
a $100 million F-22 Raptor. F-22 Raptor right there, Paul.
They should call that the Freedom Defender. That should be the name of the plane.
It's definitely the economy booster.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. For the Tennessee factory or whatever that produces that thing.
Yep. It's not too cheap. It is. I don't know why there's one sitting on the ground back
Freedom
there.
has a cost, Brad. This is it's acceptable.
I just assume that this is some sort of prototype because at $100 million a pop, I mean, like that glass is probably like 50 million. Well, maybe not.
And
50
it's not
million,
even
but
Gorilla Glass.
like they just melt down old iPhones and then turn them into candies. Why is? Oh, I clicked on the wrong day. Now I can open all these panels again and hopefully they close. Yes, there we go. We're actually good to go. How was your round, Paul, of Call of Duty?
It's good. It's often. I think I had about a 2-to-1 KD ratio, as we say, which is what I'm always shooting for.
Yeah, that's
And rarely get.
Oh, I forgot to put. Oh, I am failing at life here. I meant to put this up on the big screen. Let me find Raf's little GIFs because he did a wonderful job on uncovering screen clips.
Yeah, as somebody pointed out on Twitter, accurately, I think, this is appears to be based on a Microsoft Garage project. I don't think the arbitrary selection part of it was in there, but I could be wrong about that. But it looks like the UI is very similar.
Let's see here. Look at this. Look at this wizardry. We are just rocking and rolling. Here you go.
Yep.
Let's see.
I know. Animated GIF and everything.
Yep. Basically, a little thing pops out of here. You click it, And then you've got a couple options up top, and you drag, and you can do multiple shapes. Obviously, Raf is doing the freehand tool there, because Raf is in himself a freehand tool. Please don't
What is
hack
that
me.
browser he's using too? What is that? Is that Opera or something?
No, but Raf did a wonderful job, and I would assume that this feature is coming relatively soon, because if Raf can turn it on, clearly Microsoft can. Although I believe one of the problems is that it doesn't really save the file yet, and so maybe that's why it's not there.
So usually when he finds stuff like this, we're a couple of builds away from it happening in the Insider program.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it's safe to, unless they just cancel it or whatever. But I think we'll probably see it in the next couple of weeks.
Yep. So we got that, and then Paul, this next thing, I deliberately brought it up because I saw you and Mahedi talking about it forever. There was a lot of confusion. Raf was just saying that this is absolutely nothing, and so I'm going to let you dive into this and get all of the complexities out because I don't understand it yet. So the news headline is that Windows on ARM is getting support for 64-bit ARM apps. That sounds great, but it's not really.
Right. Microsoft should have told someone who knows what they're talking about this, because this is confusing and everyone gets it wrong. So Windows on ARM today is a 64-bit operating system, but Windows 10 on ARM today can only run 32-bit applications. And that's true of store apps, whether they are ARM or x86 based. And it's true of desktop applications. They have to be x86 based emulated, right? Microsoft has, we've known this for a while, but they've long intended to, in some future release, support 64-bit ARM apps only, and they will not be supporting 64-bit desktop apps. And so, as far as what does it bring to the table when you can run ARM 64 apps? Almost nothing, frankly. Today, if you write to the store, if you write a native UWP app, you can target different platforms. You can choose between x86, x64, and or ARM 32. Most people would just leave them all checked, right? There's no downside to doing that. It just works. And then you'll be served whichever correct version, depending on the platform you're running. So if you're running, like I'm running here, Windows 10 Pro, it's a 64-bit system. I download a store app. Assuming all the versions are available, what I will be getting is the X64, or sometimes what we call it an AMD 64, but it's the 64-bit version of the x86 platform version of that app. It's automatic. You don't have to think about it. It just happens for you. On ARM, the limitations here are many, but one of the weird ones we've run into is, for example, because we don't think about what's what in the store, an application like Adobe Photoshop Elements, which is a store app that's been used, that uses Centennial technology to get into the store, is actually a 64-bit app. It's a 64-bit desktop app. That thing's never going to run on Windows 10 ARM, no matter what happens to the platform. So this new support for 64-bit ARM apps does not help that. That's kind of a problem, because there's a couple of apps like that I've run into where you just can't use them. And the Photoshop one is the worst one for me. So what does this enable exactly? Well, not much. Like I said, you probably won't notice anything, frankly. But again, developers who check off all the boxes, which most of them probably do for UWP apps, will be able to now target a 64-bit ARM system natively. And so if you're on ARM on Windows 10 on ARM, in the future, you'll get that version of the app automatically instead of the 32-bit version, instead of the x86 version, if it's available. So it really doesn't add that much. It's not that big of a deal.
Well, that's disappointing.
Yeah. I mean, obviously x86 emulation is better than nothing, and a lot of the key apps like the Office applications are available in 32-bit versions. In fact, Office today mainstream is still 32-bit. I think because of add-on compatibility issues or something like that. But regardless, the emulation stuff was always meant to be a path forward, right? Mm-hmm. So in the future Windows, if there is one, involves store apps being the norm and legacy apps going away. And so these legacy desktop apps should eventually go the way of the dodo. But we'll see. I,
for one, welcome our store-bearing future.
Yeah, sure.
but I'm about halfway there. Well, the thing is, I use a lot of weird apps for specifically this podcasting, which I suspect will never make their way into the store. But
yeah, these transitions are really hard. You pointed out to me a formatting issue that I had this past week on a couple of articles I posted. I was testing a new Markdown editor. I do this regularly. Markdown is tough for me because the Markdown pad editor that I use is not supported. It hasn't been for years. And I have to install like a really weird version of a programmer API or a DLL or whatever that I have to keep on hand because it's not generally available anymore. Mm-hmm. So I've been actively seeking, a replacement. Unfortunately, when I paste the output from that new app I was testing into our editor on WordPress, it screws everything up. And I ran into issues like that in the past, with MetroTwit I used for maybe 2 years more than I should have or something. I don't know. And then finally the Twitter Lite, the PWA showed up, and I've been using that. But yeah, this is the problem with the store. Like when you find things that aren't available, you have to look for alternatives. And I don't know. To date, a lot of the alternatives have been pretty low quality.
Yeah, which I fully agree. But we're getting there slowly but surely.
Yeah, no, we definitely are, and PWA will help a lot.
Yeah, and iTunes will help a lot when that promise is ever fulfilled.
I mean, we know people who are using it. It's real. I think that's all we can say on that note. But yeah, it's not publicly available, so I guess it doesn't matter if it's real.
Yep.
You know what though, Brad?
What?
I bet it happens faster than a new Mac Pro. Yep.
Somebody brought up a really interesting thing. So Apple's, and somebody else did the math on some of this stuff. So, take it at their word, but you'll see where I'm going with this.
Okay.
That Apple typically takes about 2 years to build a product from roughly inception to it hitting store shelves.
Yep.
So keep that timeline in mind. It was almost 1 year ago to the date that Apple held their little powwow with a select group of writers and said, hey, we're building a new Mac Pro. And then it was yesterday that they held another select group of even smaller writers that says, hey, it's coming next year. Which, if you do the very simple back of the napkin math, Paul, that tells you that when they initially said we're doing a new Mac Pro, based on a roughly 2-year timeline, they went and said, oh, crap, we need to do something.
Right.
And and then they...
I think that's accurate. When you have to explain yourself, I'm not saying you're lying outright, but something's wrong. Something's really wrong. Apple has had to explain its Mac strategy or its lack of one several times. And they're going to do it more times because they've got MacBook Pros that the keyboards can get stuck because of a piece of dirt. There's lots of problems there. So all they do is they talk a lot about how important this professional market is to them. And they do nothing to prove that that's true.
Yep.
So I don't know. I think it was Chris Kaz or somebody posted like that TechCrunch puff piece, the external Apple PR article that appeared on the web somehow, as if this was like something Microsoft needs to be worried about. And I'm sorry, if you have to compare talk and no action to no talk and no action, I would take the latter approach every time. I mean, if you don't have anything to say, just shut the hell up. I mean,
yeah,
all they're doing is talking. You guys are really important to us. Yeah, it's been like 8 years since we've revved this product, but seriously, now we are going to do it. No, not this year. We can't make it happen in a year. It's a box with slots and chips in it. Just freaking ship it. You. That's what you do. That's your entire business. Yep. They're crazy.
Yeah,
that company is nuts.
The thing that doesn't make sense here is that the last Mac Pro that was worth anything, and not the trash can, was just a tower PC with components in it. And they're talking about this workflow. And so if this thing comes out and it's just one or two, maybe two CPUs on a board, which you can buy today, it's going to obviously be a graphics card from NVIDIA or AMD.
Right. Apple's a graphics card from Apple.
Yeah.
It's going to be an off-the-shelf part.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, and maybe I will eat crow on this, but I'm trying to think what they could do that is so game-changing for a tower-based modular PC that it takes 2 years. Because you could go to PC.
You know what they could do? They could ship it. Yeah, that would be game-changing.
You know,
that tower that you're referencing, the innovative feature of that device was that you could, with your hands, could pop the panel and it would just come down.
Yeah.
That's how innovative that thing was back in, I don't know, 1983 or some whatever year it came out. Like, just ship the box. It's a box. Ship a Nextcube. Who cares? Just no one. These people don't care what it looks like. It's not a piece of furniture. It doesn't go in the living room. It's going to sit under your desk and it's going to be powerful.
Yep.
Can you do that? Anyone can do that. HP's doing it right now. Dell is. Well, Lenovo's not actually, but most PC makers are. Easy. It's easy. This is the easy computer. The hard one is the thin thing. You don't have to make this thin. Yes, you're shipping the wrong things.
I totally do not disagree, because they could go to PCPartPicker.com right now, design their PC, and order all the parts, because, again, unless they're building their own CPU or their own GPU, just about everything else is going to be off the shelf. It's got to be.
I think someone on Twitter pointed out, by the time this thing ships, they'll have already switched over to ARM, or to their A-series chips. I think for this type of computer, which is really a workstation, they're going to have to stick with Intel, of course. I mean, all you have to do is use an NVX2 for 10 seconds to realize why ARM isn't going to work great on a desktop. But so that's okay. But, how many generations of Intel chipsets have to happen? And by Intel doesn't move particularly quick, before you're so out of date that it just gets stupid. Even since they shipped the iMac Pro, there has been a 6-core i9 series of chips that has come out. That's what this thing should be based on right now. It should be available right now.
Yep. I got nothing.
Stupid.
I mean, you can build a Hackintosh. Like, these things aren't difficult.
Yes. Like you said, go to the PC bin, the parts picker, apply your usual 147% markup, whatever it is, and just sell the thing for $20,000. And you know what? It will probably make money. It will be fine. Just put an Apple logo on it. It'll be nice. This thing is thick enough you can even have a backlight again. People will be so excited. I've already designed it. It's done. It's done. Ship it.
I don't understand what's so difficult about this, but here we are.
Unbelievable.
Here we are. Speaking of unbelievable things, Paul, not only does Microsoft like to destroy their developer base by rebooting a mobile OS, word broke out today, and this might have been posted a little bit ago, but I think Twitter finally decided on the timeline. They have a pretty good tendency of screwing over their developers about every 2 to 3 years. And on this iteration of Twitter once again screwing over developers, they are saying that on Tuesday, June 19th, 2018, they're ending the ability for third-party apps to do user streams or site streams. You'll still be able to get data, but effectively, if you like opening an app and having it just auto-populate itself without having to manually refresh, that ability will be going away on all third-party apps, which effectively kills Tweetbot, which is massively popular on iOS and Mac. And yep.
I don't know that there's ever been a company as hostile toward third-party developers as Twitter. There's a kind of a eat your baby kind of mentality over at Apple where they steal from the developer base, but they've always done a really good job of supporting that base with good tools, and they're inventing languages. I mean, that stuff, it's kind of hard to argue with that. Microsoft, like you said, actually has maybe even a richer history than you understand of replacing everything every 2 years. I used to joke about this stuff back in the 1990s. Like there was a new data access model, I think every 1 year at that point. For a while, it got kind of ludicrous after a time. It was like ADO, CDO, RDO. Like it just kind of just kept, and then Com Plus happened, and it was like all this. It was just so much stuff. But the point was not to be hostile. I mean, in Microsoft's case, this thing was probably data access over the internet was probably evolving very quickly. You could look at something like Windows Phone, where they changed the programming model at least 3 times there. Again, that thing was kind of rushed to market. It was not done maliciously. It was just, just, I don't know, incompetence, whatever. But but Twitter, like literally, it's like they're begging you not to. It's like, here's an API, don't you dare use this thing, because we will limit the number of users or the number of sessions or and then we will just cut off this access completely. And it kind of begs the question, what was the point of even providing this stuff in the first place? You've developed this rich ecosystem of third-party apps so you can cut them down one by one. It's insane.
You're not wrong.
It's insane.
And we know that this is multiple times, because there's a good friend of ours of the show, Long, built an app called Metro Twit, and then when they announced the token thing, like 8 years ago or whatever? that killed Metro Twit. And yep.
Yeah, they did everything they could to keep that thing going, and it was my favorite Twitter app. I mean, I would probably still be pretty comfortable using it today. Obviously it doesn't support any of the newer features.
Yep.
But yeah, it's just Twitter.
Here we are.
Setting. You thought the bar couldn't get any lower. Here's Twitter. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not like Twitter is exactly known for being a beacon of happiness and joy while using the service anyways, but
Sure. It's not enough that the users have to suffer. The developers do too. It's just really agnostic.
Anyways, folks, today is Friday, and Friday is an awesome day just in general. But one of the things we do on Friday is take a look back at the comments that people wrote on the site. Good, bad, or indifferent, funny, humorous, whatever you want to call it. On Paul's post, The Path Forward, Civ writes, he says, I'm concerned whether Nadella actually does have a strategy, as I'm suspicious that all he is doing is basically following the cash. I think he's an astute businessman, but I am concerned that I'm not convinced he has a Gates-like focus on where Microsoft is or should be going.
Yeah. I mean, I think I have that fear too. It's interesting to me, again, I've said this before, but he came up out of engineering. He's an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And I originally thought this was the best possible thing that could happen to Microsoft, that Microsoft as a company, just because of the nature of the company, compared to something like Apple, which is really more, obviously there's a lot of engineering over there, but it's more design focused than engineering. Microsoft to me is more of a Google type, computer science type company. And an engineer running that company makes sense to me. Like the Google CEO makes sense to me.
Yep.
But yeah, since he's taken over Microsoft, there's not really much going on in the way of engineering out of him. And there's a lot in the way of kind of robotic marketing nonsense to my mind. I mean, I've used this joke before, but I sort of feel like you could take a Satya Nadella speech and put it into Word, and it does that summarize feature.
Mm-hmm. It
would come out with nothing. Like this, it's odd to me that like an engineer can say so little in so many words. It's kind of the opposite of how an engineer would be in my mind. But as far as strategy and whatnot, it's hard to argue with the fact that Microsoft under Satya Nadella has been very successful. Both from a profits and revenue perspective and from a stock price / market cap perspective, right? So this is what matters. And whether that came from him directly or from some team of underlings, I guess doesn't matter. They've seized, Microsoft collectively has seized this opportunity to power forward. And some of it may be smoke and mirrors, whether this new stuff that Microsoft does will ever be as successful as the classic, Windows Office, Windows Server, we don't know. It's all rather well hidden, but in that sense, the strategy is working. On the face of things, too, I would say there is a Satya Nadella kind of thing about businesses justifying their existence. He's been very cold-hearted about looking at individual projects or businesses and saying, look, this thing doesn't make sense. Make it make sense in the next year or 9 months or whatever it is. And if it doesn't happen, we're getting rid of it. And obviously, Windows is the most dramatic version of that by far. But he's done that with a lot of stuff, starting, by the way, on day one with the Surface Mini. So I don't know. I mean, I think there's a weird psychology to this stuff. I think people like you and I, and probably the person who wrote this, are enthusiasts for the client stuff, Windows in particular. And that's the stuff that's getting the shaft right now. And so we might look at that and say your inability to make Windows make sense means that you're not good at business or something. Or and when in fact, this may be literally exactly what Microsoft needs, no matter what we may want, So I don't know. There's no doubt he's successful doing what he's doing. There is also no doubt that what he's doing is ruining everything I like about Microsoft. It's kind of it's kind of hard.
One minor correction: you said Surface Mini. I think you meant Windows Phone. Surface Mini was definitely a Balmer thing.
No, I think he canceled. Yeah, I thought it was. No, I think he canceled it. I think it was.
That wasn't Nadella. That was the Nokia dude, Elop. It was Elop.
I thought it was Satya Nadella's senior leadership team. It doesn't matter. Okay, doesn't matter. Whatever. We're getting the idea.
Living in the world of yesterday.
By the way, real quick, because we talked about this before. Mary Jo has finally gotten a statement from Microsoft. I asked for one, by the way. Oh, I got one. Never mind. I must have gotten the same one. So let me read the one I got. This is the Microsoft statement over the confusion on ARM64. It says, to clarify, by the way, I can already tell this isn't going to clarify this at all. I almost don't want to read this. Damn it. All right, so this is what it says. To clarify, Microsoft is planning to release a preview of the Windows 10 ARM64 SDK for store and desktop apps, allowing developers to recompile their Win32 desktop apps to ARM64 so they can run natively without emulation. With the SDK, x64 apps and x86 apps will also be able to recompile to ARM64 and run natively. We will be sharing more details on the ARM64 SDK preview at Build. Okay, so just to go back to what I had said earlier, I said that Windows 10 on ARM will never emulate x64. Mm-hmm. This does not contradict that. But this it does appear to be a little bit new in the sense that developers will be able to take desktop applications, Win32, including 64-bit desktop applications, and recompile them to ARM64 so that they will run natively on this platform. Now, I'm not a professional developer, but if you are an iTunes Apple with iTunes, or if you are Adobe with Photoshop Elements, whatever version, I'm going to go out on a limb and say I can assure you that checking a box in the compiler and recompiling that thing to x64 or to ARM64 is not just an oversimplification; it's an impossibility. I think this will work fine for smaller applications. I don't think this means that like Photoshop will be available this year on ARM64. I could be completely wrong. Maybe we need to wait for Bill to find out more. But I'm gonna throw this by Raphael. So
yeah, he's gonna know. On the back of that breaking news, the other comment this week comes from comes from Poncelius on the Office 365 updates for home and consumer. He says it's about time that email encryption has just become normal, and I fully agree. It's kind of crazy that it doesn't, but there's too many different clients and standards and everything else that Office 365 has a nice little encryption feature, but it's a little bit of a pain to jump through on occasion.
Yeah, I mean, I would extend this to encryption needs to become normal across the board. It's not just email, Windows 10 on ARM, for example, since we were just talking about that, like Windows RT before it, supports automatic automatic full disk encryption. It's on by default. It's, you can actually disable it. I don't think you could disable it in Windows RT, but I guess that doesn't really matter. I think that's the right approach. Years ago when we started encrypting things, encryption's a one-way street. If you lose the key, if you lose the ability to get into it, there's no Microsoft thing that can help you get into that. So, on Microsoft's platforms. And I think that was scary for people. But yeah, given all of these, thefts of personal data and so forth that have been occurring everywhere, I mean, full disk encryption is huge. Oddly, and maybe not oddly, but there is kind of an oddness to this. Like I said, you can get it on Windows 10 on ARM. Get it in Windows 10s today. That's going away, but you get it in Windows 10 Home and Pro and Enterprise, of course. The only place you can't enable this, I believe, still is in the Home Edition. And Microsoft just added ransomware protection to Consumer OneDrive for people with an Office 365 subscription, or they're going to sometime soon. I feel like this is the stuff that needs to be the normal people, the ones who need to be protected, because they don't know to seek out this kind of protection for themselves. Nor would they be able to implement like a third-party encryption solution on a Windows PC. Like, this should just be built in. I would, like I said, I would extend this to everything. Encryption should just be the baseline now, the bar.
I tend to agree, and I'm going to leave us on one sour note here, Paul. This popped up, in the forums. It might be a little hard to see here, but this is the Mail app, and now for certain people, there's a nice little Get Office 365 banner showing up in that app. So
is there any indication there where they're seeing this? I know it's the Mail app. I mean, is it in like the RSFID skip ahead build? Is it in current?
That I don't know. I didn't dig deeper. I was just seeing if it shows up there. It's probably coming to everybody eventually. Would be my
Well, the
guess.
reason I ask is Microsoft has put these kinds of things in different places in Windows and elsewhere. So, for example, I've seen it in OneDrive, click here to get Office 365, which I've always found to be a little annoying because I have Office 365, and I guess what I'm asking is, we've talked about ads in Windows and all that kind of stuff. Something like that on the scale of things is fairly small, although, yeah, I mean, I agree it shouldn't be there, but I'm less bothered by it if I don't see it when I am paying for Office 365, right? So I looked today in the Mail app on this computer, which is running RS4, and I didn't see it. And I'm going to do it again, but just to make sure. Yeah, it's not there, but maybe they're being semi-smart about it and not showing it to people who do have the subscription at least.
That's what I can hope, because I do, and maybe that's why it doesn't show up on mine. But
yeah.
You got anything else for today, Paul, before we wrap her up?
Yeah, just a couple of things real quick. I put out Ask Paul this morning. I mentioned some changes coming to Thurrott now. If you are a premium subscriber, you might want to just take a look at that. And if you have any comments on our proposed change, let us know. Some people also someone asked about my Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus review. I intend to get that out by the end of the weekend if I can. The short version is this is the best smartphone on the market, period. I mean, it's not even close. This thing is awesome. And for those of you wondering on a more personal note whether I'll be holding on to this thing or getting rid of it, I am in fact going to keep it. But yeah, I'll have my review hopefully soon.
Well, that is fantastic.
How about you? How does the Masters unfold? I know you were talking about this yesterday, but what's this? How does it work? Does it go all weekend? Is that?
Yeah, it goes until basically Sunday evening, as long as people
they have
are
different
still
rounds or whatever.
Yep, it's 4 rounds of golf. They played the first one yesterday. Jordan Spieth was in first. Before we started this podcast, Jordan Spieth and Rory McIlroy, basically all the top names minus Tiger Woods, were pretty much in contention. So, and contention meaning like ability to win this thing. So hopefully they will do it very well. After today, they do what's called a cut. And basically if you're doing terrible, then you're kicked out and you don't keep playing. And if you basically pulled what's called I think going to be called a Sergio now, because yesterday Sergio Garcia on a par 5 shot a very lovely 13 after putting 5 balls into the water. He's not going to be winning the tournament this year. He won it last year, but
see, I could put 5 balls into the water as well. But if I did do that, and I would probably follow it by my golf bag with all of the clubs in it, and then I would get in my car and I would drive away at a huff.
Somebody very quickly and cleverly updated his Wikipedia page and said that he retired during the 2018 Masters on a par 5 because his career. Yeah, that's. I think he tied the worst score ever on a hole with that.
That's awesome. That's a record. It's still a record.
Yeah, it's something. Yeah. So other than that, I'll be watching a lot of that. If I'm lucky, I'll be swinging the clubs a little bit here on the driving range, and that's about it.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Good.
All right. We're going to wrap it up here, folks. As always, everybody, thanks for tuning in, especially to the live show. And we'll be back right here on Monday with what should be another fun-filled episode of Therapy Daily.
This is the second time today that this phone has rung, and it's amusing because nobody has this phone number. And
sure about that?
So every call I get on this thing is spam. Also, I've never seen this icon in Android before. This is the Mint SIM on this the OnePlus 5T. It has a voice over LTE logo up in the status bar. Yeah. Interesting.
Fancy.
Alrighty.
All right.
Have a good day.
Adios.
Bye.